How's it going, everyone? It's Harvey from Weather Storm 1000, and in this video, we're going to focus on Hurricane Fiona, which is now about to make landfall somewhere near the eastern tip of the Dominican Republic at this time. And we'll also focus on the long-term future of Fiona and see if it could bring a major rip current miss throughout the east coast of the lower 48 of the United States. But before I begin, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more about Lake Con. So take a look at the water vapor imagery. We do see that the Hurricane Fiona is pretty much right at Dominican Republic's doorstep, with the eye wall now approaching, and we still do see heavy rainfall happening here right around Puerto Rico. And in terms of the organization overall for this hurricane, it seems fairly well organized around the center circulation. However, there is a little bit of dry air entraining it on the eastern side, which has been inhibiting it from rapidly intensifying, but it's certainly still intensifying as it continues its trek west northwestward, where this storm took a very strong turn to the west, much more than anticipated, because at this point the hurricane was expected to be a little bit further northward right around this area, but this storm took a very strong turn to the west, where now it's pretty much inevitable Dominican Republic will experience a landfall, when before it was anticipated to be less likely that Dominican Republic will experience a landfall. So around the eastern tip of the Dominican Republic, you need to prepare for hurricane conditions, as it seems like the eye wall will go straight over you guys right around the eastern half of Dominican Republic, right around Punta Cana and Las Terrenas. That's where you should experience hurricane conditions. So make sure to prepare accordingly, especially since this will lead to a major flash flood threat as well, which could lead to mudslides. Now, taking a look at the current radar, we do see heavy rain is still right over Puerto Rico at this time, despite the eye being well far to the west of you guys, as it did make landfall at around an 85-mile-per-hour storm. Currently, the storm is right around a category 1 at this time, and it's continuing to strengthen, and you see that pretty much the storm is right at Dominican Republic's doorstep at this time. And if I were to continue to move forward with the radar loop, we do see the eye wall is pretty much right by Dominican Republic at this time. Now, taking a look at the current wind map, let's actually refresh this so we get a better idea of how strong the winds are between the two Caribbean islands. So if we were to take a look at that, we're going to see sustained winds pretty much right around 30 to 40 miles per hour, with, of course, wind gusts being much higher than that. So let me just switch here to the wind map. I apologize, this is taking so long. Just give me 1 second here. So here are the current winds we're seeing in between Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic. We're seeing sustained winds close to, if not over, 50 miles per hour around the western portion of Puerto Rico. And we're seeing those winds strongly increase and quickly increase right around the eastern half of the Dominican Republic at this time, where we're now seeing sustained winds hovering around the 20 to 30 mile per hour range, and that's only gonna continue to get stronger as this storm continues to head further westward. So you should experience sustained winds close to 60 to maybe 70 miles per hour in some areas of the Dominican Republic as the eye wall approaches you guys, especially right around Punta Cana. That's where the eye should move straight over you guys. So you need to prepare for extremely strong winds, and I wouldn't be surprised if we saw wind gusts over 100 miles per hour in some localized areas in Dominican Republic, since we have seen wind gusts over 100 miles per hour at times in some portions of Puerto Rico, and I expect the same as the eye wall moves over Dominican Republic. Now, taking a look at what the computer models are stating at this time in terms of any inhibiting factors that might slow it down from strengthening as fast, we do have a little bit of wind shear just to north of this storm. However, it isn't really enough to completely prevent it from organizing and strengthening more, as in fact the upper level winds we're seeing right here would only help the hurricane a little bit, because that would increase the divergence law for more air to rise and a higher rate of convection to occur around center circulation. So that's certainly not good news at the upper level winds won't really be much of a factor over the next several days when it comes to the strengthening process, which means that this will be a strengthening storm as this approaches Dominican Republic. However, the great news is, of course, is that this storm is pretty much expected to move out to sea, which is almost inevitable at this time. It seems like there won't be enough of a strong ridge that'll build over the North Atlantic to maybe steer this uncomfortably close to the United States, which is certainly good news. However, with this stark shift in the forecast where this storm is moving towards the west, we could maybe see this storm move a little bit further westward than anticipated, which would mean that the United States East Coast would potentially experience higher risk of rough surf and, of course, higher surf than what you typically experience. And I wouldn't be surprised in some localized areas coastal flooding could be an issue because this storm is going to be very strong, and even though it's going to be hundreds of miles off the east coast, it will still bring up those waves along the United States East Coast for major potentially major rip current risk threat to occur. So that's going to be something to keep in mind if you're along the beaches in the East Coast. And it might not be a good week to get in the water since the rip current risk will be very high. And taking a look at the steering flow, the main steering flows with this storm, we do see that there's going to be a ridge right just to the north of this storm that's going to steer it towards the northwest, and then eventually it'll take that turn towards the northeast as trough dips down, and we'll see the westerly winds be strong enough to steer this out to sea, which is certainly good news. But that will still, this storm is still expected to bring a high rip current risk along the east coast, so that's certainly something to keep in mind. In terms of the relative humidity, we do see that while there will be a decent amount of dry air as this storm continues to head further northwestward, the European model and the GFS model don't expect that to be an inhibiting factor as this heads further northwestward, as both computer models believe that there will be just enough, it will entrain itself in just enough of a moisture bubble to fend off a lot of that stable air for this storm to continue to strengthen quite rapidly as it heads further northward, where a major hurricane is likely. Of course, Bermuda needs to pay close attention to this because this could come very close to you guys. You guys are still in the cone of uncertainty, so this is definitely something to pay close attention to if you live in the island of Bermuda. And in terms of the East Coast, just pay attention for the possibility of a high rip current risk in terms of the forecasted winds over the next several hours for Puerto Rico and Dominican Republic. You see that by 11 p.m. we should begin to see 40 to 50 mile per hour sustained winds along the eastern coast of Dominican Republic. And now we do see that this wind forecast, this most recent wind forecast, is taking a landfall just to the south of Punta Cana and approaching La Romana, Dominican Republic, where we're going to see those very strong winds and, like I said, wind gusts potentially up to 100 miles per hour in localized areas, which should bring major impacts for you guys. So you need to prepare for the potential of major flash flooding and a wind threat as this storm continues to head further northwestward into the Dominican Republic. And of course, this might be, when it comes to storm surge, a bigger concern might be along the northern coast of the Dominican Republic, where the wind will directly face you guys and bring all that water towards the coast, the northern coast of the Dominican Republic, which includes cities like Las Serenas, potentially Puerto Plata could get involved. So that's at least something you're going to need to pay close attention to if you're right along the northern coast of the Dominican Republic, because that's where the potentially the strongest storm surge, the highest storm surge should be. So keep that in mind over the next several hours. And then we should begin to see the winds wind down by tomorrow afternoon as the storm continues to head further northward, but we still see this storm quickly strengthens as it heads further northward, as it seems like the wind shear and the dry air, the lack of wind shear and the lack of dry air will allow the storm to gradually intensify as it heads further northward. And in terms of the wave height forecast, like I said, look at the wave heights along the coast, where we could easily see wave heights close to between 7 to 9 feet in some areas, especially if you're right around the outer banks of North Carolina, or if you're pretty far out to sea when it comes popping out to sea when it comes to your geography. So we do see the wave heights will be very high along the coast. So that's going to be something to keep in mind. Make sure if there's a high rip current risk, just stay out the water because it could save your life. Now, taking a look at the Puerto Rico storm surge forecast, the good news is that it seems like the worst of the storm surge has passed you guys, as the eye is now just to the west of you guys, but you still should be prepared for the possibility of strong storm surge, especially during high tide periods over the next several hours, where you could see storm surge up to 3 feet along the coast of Puerto Rico. So make sure to pay very close attention to that. And in terms of the rainfall, of course, Puerto Rico, you already experienced most of the rain that you were anticipated to experience with this storm, but you still should, there in some localized areas, you still have another 3 to 5 to potentially 5 to 8 inches of rain left on the back side of this storm, which is definitely a major concern. And even extending the Dominican Republic, we do see a large area of Dominican Republic expecting 3 to 5 inches of rain. So landslides are certainly a possibility, especially in the higher elevations of the Dominican Republic. So make sure to pay close attention to that. And in terms of my forecast when it comes to Hurricane Fiona, I am expecting this to become a major hurricane, stay off the United States coast, but there should be a high rip current risk for this week. So make sure to stay out the water along the East Coast for this week, because that could easily save your life. The rip currents are definitely something you don't want to mess around with. And in terms of what to expect for Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico, just make sure to be prepared for a major flash flood threat. And if you live in a flood prone area, make sure to prepare accordingly, evacuate your home if needed, because this is going to be one of the worst flood threats you've seen in quite a while. And in Dominican Republic, this will be the first landfall you guys experienced since 1998. So it's been 24 years in Dominican Republic since you last experienced a landfalling hurricane. So it seems like the hurricane landfall drought will end tonight, which is certainly not good news. So you need to take this storm seriously if you're right along this path, the storm's path in Dominican Republic. But anyways, guys, I thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather content, and I hope you guys have a great day.